Later. See ya.
See ya.
All right, everybody. Well, that was fantastic. I'm glad Michael was able to jump on here and answer all of our insurance questions because I think that's one, like I was saying, one kind of topic in the tiny house industry that a lot of people aren't talking a lot about because they don't know a lot about it. There's not a ton that people are able to actually, um, you know, say with certainty because it's just a little bit of an unknown area. But Michael was able to just hammer it down because he's been doing so many of these exact policies. He knows exactly what it covers and exactly what it doesn't. So really important and key there. So all right, guys. Well, the next session is with Rich P from NOAA. Rich, I just promoted you to a co-host. So if you, yep, there you are. We can see you, but we can't hear you. But your flag looks amazing.
Thank you. Thank
There
you.
it is. There it
How
is.
you doing?
Doing well, doing well. We're excited to hear what everything that you got to share with us and whatnot. We're gonna wrap out the day strong with some good quality information. So pretty stoked for it.
Good, good. All right. So, having this as a global event, whatever time you may be in, wishing you either a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Um, with that, let's all not forget to send a huge thank you to our hosts, Jack and Jason Francis, for this global tiny house conference. Uh, I was able to pop in and out of the event and feel it's necessary to send some honorable mentions to the presenters over the past 2 days. Joe Canto, she started as a DIYer and has some invaluable real world insight. Indigo River with their building aspects. And I mean, of course, everybody knows that Zach Griffin. You'd have to live under a rock if you didn't. The TV star from Tiny House Nation, and every single other couple, business partner, and presenter out there. It's really been an amazing 2 days for this whole event. Um, so, as a refresh, my full name is Richard Pitkevich. I'm president of NOAA RDI, but I go as Rich P for obvious reasons of my last name being long. Who is NOAA RDI for those that don't know? NOAA RDI is a steward for safety and compliance. We're an accredited third-party agency who provides plan review and inspection services for tiny homes on wheels, uh, schoolies and van conversions, state-approved modulars, and we also work with municipalities or authorities having jurisdictions doing inspections for items that require permits. Um, the focus today is for tiny houses and schoolie van conversions. Um, NOAA performs 100% remote inspections for somebody, a single DIY person, up through a large volume manufacturer. We've completed an estimated 50,000 remote inspections over an 8-year period. Let's think about that for a minute. 50,000 remote inspections. And then add to that, it's in locations spread out throughout the world. We have clients in Mexico. We've been had clients in Peru, Hawaii, within almost every one of the lower 48 states, I believe. Several provinces of Canada, China, Turkey, and Ukraine. I mean, we've quite the experience and can serve many, many, many needs over that. So we are going to go over maybe not such a riveting topic, but it's definitely a topic that needs to be addressed. Is I'm going to try and stick with insulation today. Anything energy related and insulation on a basic scale. Let me see if I can share my screen here. And video, audio, participants, share. Bingo, bango. And let's go to docs, events, PowerPoint and background, energy. And open sesame. Preparing. All right. So now with insulation, bear with me here and stick it out through. Um, so we have several different types of insulation. The first one on the right side of the screen would be an unfaced bat, typically used in a warmer climate. And then you have on the left, you would have a craft face paper that is, into the cavity there. Going to the next slide. So both of these photos on the left and right, they all depict an area where unfaced insulation was chosen for whatever reason. And the walls, ceiling, everywhere else that you can see. The Again, this might be more of a southern warm climate, and it actually, it does carry over to a tiny home as well. Sometimes, the craft face paper, it serves the same purpose, or on a northern area, but it's not necessary in the south. And with that, you also have foil-faced insulation. Foil-faced insulation has different purposes. It's typically used in an area where there's a magnetic concern, or that you need some type of fire rating over the bat of the insulation itself. So if you're looking at the photo on the right, that is not an actual foil face insulation. That is a foil face cover over the insulation. It's basically like a roll, and you would roll it out. So you have that option of either buying it with the foil face or aluminum faced insulation, or buying a separate roll if your needs, you find out your needs changed, and you can roll that out over it and run with it from there. And now we have one of my personal favorites of insulation, rock wool, Roxwool, I should say, with the technical name of mineral wool, rock slag, roll wool. It's, yeah, names vary. Um, this insulation, there's some later slides in here, but it is water resistant, not waterproof, and it is also fire resistant, but not fireproof. Eventually it will burn, but it takes a whole heck of a lot to make that happen. I mean, I've personally had this insulation, got it from a job site, and let it sit outside of my house for 6 months, when it first came on the market, because I heard these stories on it. And wife was a little frustrated with me, of course, but here we are. So the after letting it sit out for 6 months, I literally could pick up that insulation, and it was still in the same form that it was when I put it there. Now, if I would have tried that with a regular bad insulation, it would have been a mess. I mean, it would have been falling apart in pieces, if not disintegrated already. Here is mineral wool or Roxwool in a little bit of different format. So this is known as a product called Comfort Board. Comfort Board it's an insulation product that is meant to go on the exterior of whatever you're building. So you could put it on your tiny house, and the advantage to this is the simple fact that you are stopping the transmission of heat or cool from the outside in. Most people will still build, or most people will still install insulation on the inside, but this is basically your first preventative layer, if you will. It's it comes in varying thicknesses. I believe you can get it down to 1 inch all the way up to 6 inches in 1 inch increments. And you just install wood slats over it, depending on, what you're putting on your tiny house. It can go, the wood slats go vertical, go horizontal, doesn't matter. It works just one and the same. And this is another view of Roxel. And now this project in itself is definitely a little bit ahead of the game. They're using zip sheathing with all the seams properly taped, all the nail holes. They seal those penetrations off. So you're maintaining your weather resistant barrier. That green part that's on the zip board, that's your weather resistant barrier. That's maintained right up front, and then you have your Roxol over that. And if you look at the window in the top corner there, they even went to the extent of packing the window jamb out with foam board insulation to give it a little more R value around that bump out there. So it's a lot of forethought and time and effort put into this one. Um, on the bottom of the screen, we have foam board insulation. This is just standard foil faced foam board insulation. That can also be used in place of Roxol, um, or you can actually use it on the chassis or within the wall cavities themselves. We have had many builders that have done it that way. Now this is basically two roof assemblies. The top one is metal roof, and it has insulation board already as part of the roof system. So this is basically bought from the manufacturer through a supply house or your own supplier or anything like that. Um, it's a really smart way to go, honestly, because it's basically, serves you as two-in-one product and gets you ahead of the game. And the lower slide is a depiction of a roof system. So you have your trusses, your truss system, and then you would have your sheathing, your wood sheathing that would go down. And then you have what would be called polyiso board. Now, polyiso board is a little bit different than your typical foam board insulation. It's made for the heat and cold that a roof is going to see over its use. A typical foam board insulation would disintegrate over time, over a short time, actually. And so if you're ever looking to put insulation on a roof, seek out polyiso, specifically designed for roof system. And I am cruising here. Now these are two wholly different options. The one on the left would be a SIP panel, structurally insulated panel. They come from the factory with OSB on the interior face and OSB on the exterior face. Then there's an adhesive applied, and in the middle is that EPS foam that they're calling out. Again, you can get them in varying thicknesses. Typically, we have seen tiny homes use these. We have one builder who uses this as their floor system. It just provides a level of comfort within a tiny house that you really can't beat. Because as everybody knows, the tiny home is sitting on a metal chassis, and with the metal chassis, you get a lot of conductive cold weather that comes up through that metal frame and metal cross members. So this is a great way to go on installing this on a floor system. But it can and has and is being used as part of wall system and roof system. So in a sense, you can't make this yourself. We would never accept it. These products are tested and approved and go through, some rigorous testing. So, to make sure that they are not going to peel away from one another and have, create a bigger issue later on. And the last thing we want our guy at Mac Insurance to say is, nah, sorry, you know what, we're not gonna approve this rebuild because, you took it upon yourself to build one of these walls. Um, so yeah, that's it's a really good product. I can't say enough good about it. And on the right, we have a insulated zip board. It's called a Zip R board. So it's that same zip board that you've seen a little bit earlier, and it has an adhered insulation to it. So you basically you just put it up like a regular piece of sheathing, a little bit heavier. Put it up like a regular piece of sheathing, and you put your fastener right through it, and you have that break already before you even get into the wall cavity for the insulation to be more effective overall. Again, you can get it in varying thicknesses, which increase the R value and so on and so forth, so long as you have the space. And we all know space in a tiny house is very critical. And this is an actual tiny home, and it is a full SIP. Very basic structure in nature, but the floors, walls, roof were all designed this way. Um, and this is basically the rough-in stage. Um, Now, when you do a full SIP like this, or even just a wall system, you when you go through your manufacturer, whoever you're purchasing it through, you have to know your window and door and any large openings. They want to know that up front because they're going to cut it in for you and have it ready for you. There are very few manufacturers that allow you to cut on the fly, so to speak. And um, not to say that you can't, but always check before. Don't ask for forgiveness after because you might be asking for a lot more forgiveness than what you think. But yeah, I mean, this house is super tight. You could probably heat it with a candle, um, or two, and you'd be fine. And here is another picture of a SIP. Gives you a little bit same kind of breakdown. Two things that I didn't mention the last time were a lot of them come with electrical chases. Again, each manufacturer is a little bit different. Some will just automatically put it in place. Some will ask you for, if you want it in place, and you direct them to where you think you would want it and go from there. And then how this is fastened is like basically to the top of the wall or the bottom of the wall or or a corner. Is they leave a little bit of OSB hanging overhang from the end wall, and you run nails through it just like you would any other sheathing to wood stud, and fasten it that way. Um, it's again, it's a great product. It can be a little expensive on the more expensive side, but it's definitely worth at least the consideration of it at the least on the floor itself. Because on the floor, I mean, you would be drilling, maybe a couple holes for electric, which wouldn't affect the integrity of the unit, or plumbing, an inch and a half for kitchen, a 2 inch for a shower, and maybe a 3 inch or 3.5 inch for a toilet. So again, it's a great way to go when you're considering building a tiny house, especially at the floor system. Because if you have any experience building with a tiny house, most trailers out there, most tiny home trailers, they have an outer flange. Like, so when you're when you look at the whole chassis, they'll on the very perimeter of the unit, they'll have an outer flange, and that outer flange is typically where the wall sits on, and it builds up from there. But in retrospect, there's barely any insulation, if any, under that flange, besides the wall that's attached on top of it. So, having a SIP panel or a raised floor would really, really do you wonders. Okay. And anybody, if you have anything that you want to ask, feel free, chime in, just send it in the chat, and let me know. And then for different type of installations. So we have spray foam installations here. On the left, you have open cell. On the right, you have closed cell. And the names imply exactly what they are. They open cell is for all intents and purposes, it's porous. It'll allow air movement in and through it. Whereas closed cell, it doesn't. There's no air movement at all with it. Um, and again, there's different applications for each one. So, depending on the area that you're in or want to be in, or likely to most travel in, that's how you want to, that's what'll dictate which way you go with open cell or closed cell. Typically, closed cell insulation roughly gives you an R value of R7, or let's say R6.5 per inch, depending on the manufacturer and those kind of things. And with open cell, it's half that. So you'll be looking at, about an R3 per inch. So, if you have open cell, you'll need a deeper cavity to achieve the same amount of R value. And then if you look at the photos themselves, I mean, closed cell, well, depending on the type of year, I've seen some wicked sprays, but depending on the type of year, time of year, I should say, and temperature and things like that, humidity also plays a role when spraying. That, it's usually more of a flush, nice look, if you will. And open cell is just, it's rough. And that's again because it's porous product, and it allows air movement. So it's naturally going to be, full, a little full with pockets to allow air movement. All right. Now this is a system that I personally enjoy. This is called a flash and bat. So in a nutshell, now these are both closed cell, or no, they're the top one is a closed cell insulation, spray foam insulation with an unfaced bat on the bottom. And the bottom photo is of an open cell spray foam with a craft face paper on the bottom side of the roof there. Now, typically a flash and bat, it's about an inch, give or take. It gives you a nice barrier where it really locks, everything into place and gets all in the crevices that, a bat would never get into. I have probably seen maybe three tiny homes that have done this. The reason being is a tiny home is small in area, and your sprayer, they're going to come out and they are going to, set up. They have to set up. They have to, tear down. They have to clean, and the time that it takes them to do that on a tiny house, it 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 would be it would not make sense to not fill the whole cavity for the small amount of extra time that it would take. So you're probably going to end up paying the same cost for a flash and bat as you would for a full depth insulation spray foam job that you could have just got up front. But it's still one of those products that are out there. The builders that we have had do it, they had their own spray system, so that made sense for them because it saves money on the on spraying the product itself, and it still gives the consumer or their client a really good product. And here we have foam board insulation. Um, we have also had clients who, instead of using traditional bats or spray foam or Roxol, they've actually filled their wall and ceiling cavities and floor cavities with cut strips of foam board. If they have more or less it'll end up being friction fitted, and any gaps and things like that, they are required to fill it in with like a can spray foam or something along those lines. Um, we've seen probably a small rash of it for about, I don't know, about a year and a half, and then um, I think people just realized how labor intensive it was because you're cutting the board. You might have been saving a couple dollars over bat, I guess. I really don't know. Or maybe they just had a truckload of it that they wanted to get rid of. But it doesn't really make that much sense to stuff the cavities with this full depth. Besides, I mean, you will achieve a greater R value, a tremendous R value, but um, it just, time over money for some people. Here's an example, rather poor example actually, on the top photo. So this is a stud wall with looks like foam board is actually behind it. But it serves the purpose of letting you know that the foam board, can again be stuffed in those cavities and sealed as well. The bottom photo illustrates that the same effect that the previous slide with the Roxol comfort board. You can install foam board on the exterior of your tiny home. Um, Again, foam board comes in varying thicknesses. I think you can get it down to a 1/4 inch. Um, and it comes like an accordion because it's all folded up because it's such a small depth. Um, and you can get it as thick as, I don't know, whatever the sky is. But yeah, you would do the same process, put it on the exterior, fasten it in place, and use your wood strips to secure whatever your exterior facade covering is. And so here we have on the left is an unfaced bat wall, and they're actually using it looks, I don't know, I'm guessing maybe an inch of foam board insulation. This one's a specialty product, um, but for all intents and purposes, it serves the same purpose. The only thing you have to really be careful on with this one is if you have electrical boxes set and everything else, or even plumbing, depending on how tight things are. You have to plan for this and have your boxes set out, that extra depth or thickness to make certain that you have a positive fit. And on the right is a tiny house roof with closed cell insulation. And this one is a tiny house. Um, they're using Roxol in all the wall cavities, and I believe they used it in the floor cavity as well. And then again, it goes to closed cell spray foam in the roof. Um, They have a little pink bat on the left side, and I think a little small area on the right side. Um, I guess they either ran out of it or what have you, but it gives you a good idea. You can always mix and match how you want to put your insulation in, or what you think best works for you or your client. Um, the nice part about Roxol over traditional bat is it gives you a little bit higher insulation value. So, like for example, a 2x4 or no, a 2x6 with a bat insulation, it gives you an R21. With Roxol, it gives you an R23. So it's definitely and it's fire rated, waterproof, all that happy fun stuff. Uh, let's see here. So the photo on the left, that is another house with Roxol and random uh, standard insulation. Um, I think there was a panel box or something above that one, but more focused on what's below that wood header. So below the wood header is a wheel well for the tiny house. Now, wheel wells, if you don't cover them in some means, method, or way, they will be problematic. They will transfer every bit of heat or cold into the tiny house and end up destroying your floor and whatever else if you have cabinets there and the like. Um, so at a minimum, you want to wrap your wheel well with foam board insulation. It is an absolute. I know for NOAA itself, we require it. I can't speak to the others, any other inspection agencies, but I have not heard different that they actually do provide or do require it. And on the right is a window, a bit of a mess to say the least. Um, so anytime you're installing a window and we perform an installation inspection, um, you you are required by the manufacturer, and we are going to look for it to fill in the jam between the actual window frame and the house frame. Um, this one, it looks like they used like a fire rated foam. Um, and if you're gonna, fill a window, please follow manufacturer's guidelines. Um, all the window manufacturers, if you're gonna use foam, they want you to use uh, a foam that isn't rapid expanding. Because what happens with these types of foams is it can make your window unusable. When it dries, it has a tendency to push on everything to try and fill any void. But when it does that, it can actually stop your window from opening. So you want what's called a low expansion foam when you're filling around a window if you're using foam. And this is the underside of a tiny house trailer. This manufacturer, it comes right from the factory, which is honestly a smart way of doing it. Um, right from the factory with a metal pan, and it comes with closed cell insulation already installed. This way, you don't have to fiddle with anything. You start your build on top and go. Um, and then you can see the areas where we're pushed out a little bit, the insulation from any seams, gaps, or openings. Um, but one thing to remember is, no matter if you do, you buy a trailer like this, or or you do it yourself, whether it's spray foam, bat insulation, Roxol, foam board, um, you have to cover the underside exposed area uh, of foam board. You can use a metal pan liner. You can use what they use in the RV industry, which would be like a geotextile, a woven geotextile. Um, oh gosh, it's slipping my mind right now. But it's. I mean, you can buy the stuff readily from Amazon or an RV dealership. Underbelly, underbelly panning or skirting, they call it. Um, but that's a little bit, it gets a little tricky to secure that, the geotextile. So just be aware and, just be safe. Um, there's a question on here and it says, should this be done first before the build of the tiny home? I'm assuming we're talking about the spray foam insulation in the floor. Not necessarily, because you're gonna run piping down through there. Um, and well, 90% of the builders do. And it's okay to run, everything that you have in place first, and then come back and have it spray foamed, and then after that, or insulated in whatever manner you want, and then um, put your pan liner on after that. No, the metal pan and base. The metal pan and base, I would recommend it if you can, because it just helps to keep things like when you're trying to do it after the fact. You're going to have your plumbing pipes down there, if you have your plumbing pipes down there, and it's going to be a disaster to try and get around to cut and everything else. When it's in place already, it's easier to take a hole saw and boop, go right through it, and you're done. Let's see here. So, you're welcome. So another means and method to our part of NOAA's requirements, is one of the many areas where we differ from the other inspection agencies, is we require some type of humidity removal from the house itself. Now, these two items on the left and right, they're both one and the same. They're called a humidistat switch. And basically, it's a switch that you set for in the bathroom that will automatically turn the fan on either at a preset level when the humidity reaches, 60, 70%, whatever it may be, and it lets it run for a certain amount of time. So whether that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour. Um, you definitely want that in place. Even if you have a window in the bathroom, this humidistat is in addition to that, because you know vast majority of people nowadays don't leave windows open. Um, and you can't rely on a window being open in the dead of winter. If you're using this in a cold climate, you are not going to want to be throwing your heat out the window, essentially. So humidistat just makes sense. And if you think about it from a logical standpoint, is a tiny house is literally a tiny house. And whether you have one or two people or a dog or especially plants, it tends to produce a high humidity level in a short space. So it's really essential that this be installed. We do realize that most tiny homes have mini splits and they also have humidity control in them, but we don't want to be wholly dependent on those as our only source. When we have this, it's basically a simple and cheap option to do. And in addition to, or in replacement of, I should say, that humidistat, is you can buy a fan that has humidity controls right on it. Again, you can see with the photo on the right that it allows you to set the humidity level. It allows you to set the timer for a certain amount of time, so it'll automatically kick on and just go until it's done, and then it'll kick off. So if you're not buying a lower end fan and you're going to spend the money, then you won't have to have that humidistat switch itself. This is a lower end ERV, energy recovery ventilation. This is another option in lieu of the humidistat. Um, I think this unit was around $350, give or take. Obviously more expensive than, well, not really, because some of the exhaust fans in a bathroom can really get up there. But the one thing that you really, really have to pay a lot of mind to is where you're placing something like this in the unit. Placement is everything. That you really have to read the manufacturer's instructions and go through it there. So the question is there an alarm that goes if the humidity is more than needed? So no, there's no alarm. It would just automatically kick on at whatever that preset humidity level is, and then it'll run until the time, basically the timer shuts it off. So if the timer's set for 5 minutes or 50 minutes, it'll shut off at that point. It's good, really good question though, actually, because I'm surprised somebody hasn't, well, maybe out there, who knows, but I haven't heard of it yet for an alarm system, kind of like a smoke detector or carbon monoxide detector. Um, and this goes to our insulation in respect with framing. Um, Framing can really, really change how your tiny house performs in numerous ways, obviously structurally and energy wise too. Um, because so lumber in itself, in a broad statement of mine, is wood. It has an R value of about an R1 per inch. So essentially, if you have an inch and a half piece of lumber, um, you have an R 1.5. But in a 2 inch piece of that foam board, that can be up to an R10. So with the framing, if you can eliminate, say, having, your header packed from front to back, um, then, and replace one of those pieces of wood with foam board, you're tremendously going to help the tiny house with the insulation factor. And a lot of times you can, because most openings, well, I can't say most, but it used to be when tiny houses were being built that you didn't have uh you had windows, but you had what was pretty much necessary for windows. You didn't have a 6 or 8 foot just a picture window in them. Now you do, so it gets a little more tricky. But most headers, you can go with a single piece of wood. So like even like a 2x6 header, single header, as opposed to a double 2x4. It just makes sense to do it that way. And now this is a little more complicated. This is called a box header. And if you want to do this, please do your research. Don't just think you can build it and call it a day and hope it works. There's formulas to this. If you want to really get involved with box headers, I would recommend on obviously Google or YouTube. But in addition to that, after you go through those two sources, you want to look into, and you can Google it for free, the let's say the 2021 International Residential Building Code. So how big or how deep that box header is depends on your overall wall length and the overall opening under whatever it's going to be, a door, a window, whatever it is. But the advantage of this is huge. I mean, you can basically fill all your cavities almost like a stud wall and retain as much insulation as possible. Obviously, there's a couple caveats with that where you have to use structural wood panels, and they have to be aggressively fastened uh, to the face of your wall. So again, if you're interested in it, Google it, YouTube it, but ultimately end up at the International Residential Building Code. You can literally Google, 2021 International Residential Building Code, structure, headers, and it'll take you to this and a lot of other information you probably never wanted to know. All right. So. This gets back to another method of an insulated header. It's basically a sandwich type on the left side. So the um, the sandwich, well, I mean, this is designed for a 2x6, obviously, but for all intents and purposes, even if we had, a 2x4 wall, we can get rid of one of the 2x layers of the header. And then you would have basically a sandwich of insulation between the header. Um, there is a national home builder out there. They do this on every single one of their homes. They run their homes through a very, very, very tight process to try and make them meet the minimum energy code. And this is one of their ways of doing it with the insulated headers. The photo on the right is, again, it goes back to what I was saying a little bit earlier with regards to low expansion foam. This one's a little bit different though. This is showing not so much at a window frame to house frame, but it's showing if you have a gap or gaps, which I would hope you don't, from your framing to your wall or a drywall, that you can use the low expansion foam there and just to fill those voids. It's just generally good practice. And another method, because don't get me wrong, low expansion foam is good, but it's not the only tool in the toolbox. This is in both photos. It's called a backer rod. It comes in like it's a little circle, uh, foam board or foam, I should say, not foam board. Usually comes in a coil, and you unroll it and you basically gently stuff it in, and I mean you could fill from front to back with this, front of the window frame to the back of the window frame, and then just run a bead of silicone or some type of flexible window silicone over it to really lock it in place. It's a good product. It comes in various widths and lengths as well. So it's definitely there are other options out there besides spray foam if you have people conscious of not wanting that type of product. This. We all seen it on construction sites. NOAA is requiring this as a minimum on the tiny homes. This is sill seal. So sill seal is a product that was originally intended to go on top of a foundation before the bottom wood sill plate goes into place. This, well, for construction purposes and on homes, I mean, it helped with, small deviations in the foundations and things like that. But moreover, it helps with air infiltration into the home. It's crazy how small areas or small pockets can really lead to airflow into the house, whether it's a tiny house or stick built home. The one thing that I truly like is the photo on the left. You basically could have your foundation or your chassis, and then you would have your sill seal, and then your sheathing with your sill plate. Um, but they took the extra step to seal it on the outside with tape. That tape is, I don't know if anybody's ever dealt with it. It's very sticky. It's called Protecto. And there's many other manufacturers out there, not touting any certain manufacturer here, just trying to give people good advice. Um, that is a great way to do it. Seal it from the outside in, and your product is always going to end up better in the long run. And this is a photo of the thermal break that I was talking about. So, in replacement of sill seal, this person building this unit, they're using foam board. So basically, anywhere there's metal that's gonna be in contact with the wood, we have it listed in our specs that you have to at a minimum have sill seal. So that could be on your main frame rails, that could be on your cross members, anywhere where metal is going to touch wood subfloor or wood flooring in general. Now, they do make foam board that you can do this with. But if you do foam board, please, 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 please know that you have to use a foam board. Foam boards have different ratings. So for this type of application under a floor system, you have to use a foam board that has a minimum of a 60 PSI rating. So essentially what happens is, like everything else, you're walking on a surface and, it'll compress over time or in short order, depending on how soft it is. So with the 60 PSI, that is the minimum standard, industry standard to use it as a base under your floor system. Um, Honestly, I would much prefer to see 100 or 150 PSI product. Just because if this goes wrong, it's going to go wrong fast, and it's going to be very, very expensive to replace. But this is a great way of doing it. Obviously, it's provides a much better seal and much better thermal break than a sill seal would. But again, sill seal is a minimum for us, so this is definitely a step above that minimum. Um, so again, remember 60 PSI is the minimum, but you can always go higher. And then you would attach your subfloor right through that. So the photo on the right is again, it's Roxol. It's showing its water resistance. I mean, the water literally will bead off of it or just bead and sit there. Now don't get me wrong, if you leave it out long enough, it will soak through, but I mean it's insanely minimal. Um, and that is a trailer on the right with your cross members and things like that. Just to give you an idea of, yes, that is what you would have to cover with either sill seal or that 60 PSI or greater foam board. Because the metal, we don't want that metal being in direct contact with that wood subfloor. We want to give you, as comfortable as a product as we can. Not that you're walking around without shoes and your feet are always cold in the winter. Nobody wants to go through that unless you're that kind of person. I don't know, but that's definitely not me. I'm a little too suburbanized. This is a photo that I found of Roxol. It gives the example of, it is truly a fire resistant product, not fireproof. Um, don't do this, as a test. Don't stick your hand on one side and have a torch on the other. But it sets the point that it's a very good product. And if you live in wood or highly wooded area, this could be a good product for you. Glass. So glass is windows are an interesting. So our spec with Noah is that you have to have a minimum of a dual pane window. Single panes are out. They're something that's old school. You can also obviously go higher, always go greater, and have a triple pane and things like that. Um, Now, one thing to really, really understand about windows is, I'm a big fan of having a lot of windows, especially in a tiny house. It makes it feel gigantic if you have windows, a lot of window space. Um, is that a typical window, at least in my area, the U factor, and all the windows have this information on them, so they'll have a U factor on them. They won't have the R value, but they'll have a U factor. So in my area, the code requires a 0.28 window U factor. And that translates into a window with essentially, well, let's just stick with 0.333 for this purpose. So if my area required a 0.333 U factor window, which is pretty standard across the states, um, that would only give me an R3 insulation value. So just remember when you purchase windows, buying a higher quality window, especially if you're going to live in it full time, um, it could pay you dividends in just comfort. Um, it's very, very, very helpful on that end. I mean, you can find higher end windows or higher performing windows, I should say, still at a very reasonable prices. You just gotta, do a little shopping and comparing and things like that. And get through here. I'll just buzz through this part. So, with windows, you have wood, aluminum, and vinyl frames. They all have their pros and cons. There's no right or wrong to any of them. It's really personal preference and what it comes down to budget purposes. And one of the things that we run across frequently, especially with tiny house, you have to have certain size egress windows. Um, those openings, please do all of us a favor. Those openings are measured from the inside jamb to inside jamb. You can see in all four of these photos here that every window has it, they're showing the measurements from the inside to inside. So if there's an extra bump or an extra piece of molding or trim that's on the inside, you have to go from that part and then measure in. Um, with tiny houses, we run across sometimes we run across unfortunately where it's an inch small or 2 inches small on one dimension, and it's terrible because it's egress. It's not something that anybody can really compromise on. We have to have those minimum standards for people to be able to get out or in them, honestly. Um, so yeah, just be very, very careful. How far does an awning casement window need to open to count? Um, that gets a little tricky. So if you look at the two lower photos, it does have to go to a full open position. And then that's when you start your actual measurements. Now, the nice part about awning windows is if you get it through a lumber supplier or a window supplier or even some of the big box stores, if they're knowledgeable, they can you can tell them that you need it to be egress compliant and give them, the minimum dimensions and things like that. And they also have like it's basically a quick release button on the bottom part of the crank. So don't forget to use that to your advantage because you don't want to be, replacing a window. Does Noah require a 5.7 square foot for its egress? So Noah has two standards. The first standard is the Noah Plus, where that's only requires a 17 by 24 window, which is ANSI requirement. And then we have a dwelling standard, which is based off of the state of Colorado, because the state of Colorado requires that. And that does require, if it's a loft, to have a 5.7 square foot egress window. So basically, it's the same as any new home that you walk into and it has a second story. You would have to have a 5.7 square foot window. Now, the only exception to that is if you have a bedroom that is on the first floor, that only has to be a 5.0 square foot window, so a 5 square foot window. And the last slide here, which I'm a minute away from my time, is how do you calculate the square footage of a window? It's very simple. You do it in inches. You screenshot this, write it down, whatever you need to do. To calculate the square foot, you just take the width in inches by the height in inches. Again, inside measurement to inside measurement. And then once you multiply that, you divide it by 144, because there's 144 square inches in a foot. And then it'll spit out, whatever the opening size is. It'll, for 5.7 square foot, it'll literally say 5.7 square foot or something to that nature. So I am up against my time and I am out of slides. So this this worked out pretty well. You're very welcome. Kind of lead homes. I'll tell you, anybody could do it. Just yeah, I appreciate the accolades greatly. So thank everybody for their time. You're very welcome. And anybody needs, anybody has any questions, whether it's Noah or, a competitor or anything else, feel free to, reach out. You want to reach out in your email. If you go on our website, you can reach out on the chat, or just call us. We're not just here for our clients. We're trying to help the public in general. So don't be shy. Now, obviously, we're not going to take you through a whole build without being a client, but if you have a general question, we're here for you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rich. We appreciate it. You jumped on here, gave lots and lots of good, valuable information for people to optimize their tiny home build and everything. So appreciate that a ton.
Sure, absolutely. I'm glad to be a part of this, and I appreciate you guys for doing it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful time, and you wrapped up the entire event. So it's awesome. Good stuff.
All righty. Thank yous, and everybody have a fantastic weekend.
Thank you. You too. You
All right.
have a wonderful weekend and enjoy the day.
Thank you. Take care.
Catch you later.
All right. Bye-bye.